Good morning and welcome to this virtual learning opportunity. My name is Joe Schmidt. I'm the Social Studies Specialist for the Maine Department of Education. Today we are talking social studies in the elementary classroom. I'm very happy to have 4 teachers with us today. These 4 teachers are members of the 2019-2020 Teacher Leader Cohort that I run each year using some of our federal Title II and Title IV funding. With us today, I'll go across my screen. We have Stacy McCluskey, we have Stephanie Nichols, we have Jen Lagasse, and we have Jennifer Basset. All 4 of them participated in a series of trainings with me, getting resources, books, DBQ project binders, where they worked through it as a group, and the ultimate goal was to create a unit that would take place sometime in April of kind of an integrated new best study approach. They were going to film their classroom, edit it down, and come back to the group in May to say, okay, so here's what this actually looks like in practice. If you haven't been paying attention, turns out none of them are in school with their classes, so we were unable to fulfill that part. But I did reach out and ask if they would be interested in sharing any of their learning. So that's what we have here today. I know the 4 of them have been communicating and have kind of an order and what they're going to talk about. So at this point, Jennifer, you are still the co-host if you need it, but go ahead and I will turn the floor over to you to do a formal introduction of yourself.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Basset. I teach 3rd grade at Green Central School. We're part of MSAD 52 with Leeds and Turner. My district is in the process of implementing the new social studies standards released by the Department of Education. At first, the task seemed overwhelming to us, but as a team, we came up with an action plan to make the changes we needed. Our grade level leaders met and we created a scope and a sequence of what would be taught across each strand at each grade level. We worked with our grade level teams to design a curriculum map for each strand. I also applied to be part of the social studies teacher leader cohort with the Maine DOE. I did this so I would be more skilled at designing social studies units that would meet the new requirements, but most importantly, they would be meaningful for my students. I wanted to bring this learning back to my district to help in our future planning. We were given many resources as part of our membership of the cohort. We left our first meeting with a huge stack of books to help guide us in our social studies work. One book that really grabbed me was this book. It's called The Inquiry Design Model, Building Inquiries in Social Studies by Kathy Swan, John Lee, and S.G. Grant. It led me through the 3 phases of planning a unit. The first phase was developing the inquiry. I started by creating a compelling question, which is the overarching question that everything in the unit supports. The 3rd phase was finishing the inquiry, which requires the students take informed action. They interact with each other and with people out in the community outside the classroom. Going through these steps ensured that I had a thoughtful plan. Each step had importance and relevance. Every aspect had the compelling question in mind, and it guaranteed that our learning stayed focused and on track the whole time. As part of our work for the cohort, we designed a unit that we would teach and that we were supposed to record. Then we were going to bring that video back to our last cohort meeting to share. I chose civics and government, and a big part of my blueprint was getting my students involved in the local government and businesses. I planned to go to the Greentown office, have a local career day in my classroom, and visit other places of importance like the library and the Grange in town. Learning I had done as part of the cohort got me thinking outside the box. Instead of staying in the classroom teaching my students, I was getting them involved and giving them ownership in their learning. I hope the work we did would make my students lifelong citizens and critical thinkers. Unfortunately, thanks to COVID-19, our plans have been put on hold. I still have a great unit waiting for us when we do return. Hopefully that's with this year's class. I plan on using our time away to go through the other 3 strands and make the blueprint for those as well. One tip that I have for you on your journey as you're changing the way you teach social studies is to think outside the box as much as possible. Instead of just presenting the information to the students, try to make learning opportunities that they can be involved in their learning. one of my activities in my civics and government unit is making a sort of a scavenger hunt that would be made from a KWL chart that we made as a class at the beginning of the unit. It would incorporate all the activities such as field trips, readings, interviews, and local career day, where I'd have local business owners come into the classroom. The scavenger hunt would be used throughout the unit to collect the information the students decided was interesting and important. A second tip I have is around performance assessments. Assessments can take many different forms. It doesn't have to be the paper and pencil test that we've become used to in the past. My assessment for the civics and government unit was going to be posters that small groups made. Each group would pick a part of our unit that they found the most interesting. The main source of information that they had would be from the scavenger hunts they completed throughout the unit. It could be government structure, lawmaking, town budgets, local businesses, or anything they felt passionately about, or as passionately as third graders feel about communities, I guess. They would design and create a poster displaying their learning. Then the posters would be displayed in public places around town, like the town office, the library, the local grocery store, the school lobby. And this would not only prove what they had learned, but it would also give it a purpose and a value. So that's what I had. Were there any questions for me?
If anybody has any questions for Jennifer, feel free to drop them into the chat box or unmute yourself at this time.
I have a question.
Okay.
So can you hear me, Jen?
I can.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit more about the scavenger hunt? Because the scavenger hunt, your students are making that, right?
Yes.
And
Well,
you said oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to say we would make it as a class. So we would do the KWL chart. We would focus on what we wanted to learn and then make that different parts of our scavenger hunt. And I envisioned it being like pages for the different topics and what they wanted to learn about the different topics, like town government. What did they want to learn about town government? Who is like the decision maker in the town, and different things like that as we went along. And they would keep those scavenger hunts with them throughout the unit, so then they could record the information as we go.
I love that idea. Good one.
Thanks. Thanks. Any more questions? All right, then I will hand it over to the next speaker, who is Stacy McCluskey, and she teaches 4th grade at Carabec School.
Thank you, Jen. So I'm sorry, I'm just distracted by the different view that I have. That's fine. So as Jen said, I teach 4th grade at Carabec Community School. It's in North Anson, Maine. And our district has decided to only offer paper-based support material during this time for grades kindergarten through 5th grade. So we can use technology, but it can only be for enrichment activities. So that has been a challenge. And so what I'd like to talk to you a little bit about is how to integrate social studies with ELA, and because, at least in my district, our approach has been, or our goal has been, to have our students maintain the skills that they have learned, not to introduce new skills. So this is the book that I'm going to focus on today. Don't let the bland cover fool you. It's really full of great information, vignettes. It has graphic organizers. It's excellent. And so this is all about building historical literacies. So historical literacies, basically, that is what historians do when they are gathering information from multiple sources and then writing arguments. And there are many, many historical literacy skills that are embedded in those larger skills. So sourcing, a document, contextualizing, corroborating information amongst multiple sources, and a lot of other other skills. But the good news is that there are many general literacy skills that that Noakes talks about in this book that I see as strengthening our kids' muscles so that when they return, they will be able to build upon those general literacies to develop some more historical literacies. So I think that's great news, because what many things that we have already taught our students can be practiced independently at home. For example, we have taught our students how to do pre-reading activities, like taking a text walk, paying attention to text features, paying attention to who is the author, when was this book or text published, looking at the pictures, reading the captions, looking at the headings and subheadings, all of those text features to activate background knowledge. That is a general literacy that historians use. Another, also all of the during reading strategies that we teach our kids, how to slow down when a text gets complicated and reread to check for understanding, to summarize, to visualize, to make connections like text-to-text connections, text-to-self connections, text-to-world connections. These are all general literacies that Noakes cites as being utilized by historians. I know many teachers use or have their students do close readings as part of their reading routines, and that's another general literacy that is used. There are also things that I know many of us teachers do that complement historical literacies. For example, many of us are a big fan of paired texts. So you can use a paired text, say, to contextualize information. So say you had your students reading biographies. If you paired each biography with a text that told more about that time period, then that would be doing something that historians do, which is to contextualize text, to contextualize information. Also, if you're using a paired text, you could pair text from different points of view and ask your students questions about that, about point of view. So those are some things that you probably are already doing that you can maybe tweak slightly. Also, I'm going to share my screen for a moment. You may have graphic organizers that your students have used multiple times and that they are familiar with. So I'll share with you one of mine. Oh, I have to see how I can get rid of this thing on the top. Okay, let's see. No, that's not it. Oh, right here. Okay. So when we were doing our civil rights unit, and we used this graphic organizer many times with picture books as a whole class, and then in small groups, and then I had them use this on their own. So, and this comes from Every Book is a Social Studies book. In this quadrant, we have what social need did the individual discover, and what change did he or she want to happen. Well, I'm thinking as I'm sending home biographies of inventors, this could be tweaked slightly. So I could say, maybe take out the social and just say, what need did the individual discover? And then the rest of this could really stay the same. What experiences or people inspired the individual? This could be a good experience or a bad experience. What obstacle or challenges did the individual overcome? What was the individual's main contribution to society? And you can compare, and you can you can use this with paired texts as well. If you have two texts about the same person, then the information may be slightly different for each of those sources that you use. Let's see, I want to be sure I'm saying everything I wanted to. Okay, so something that is a historical literacy that my students don't have a lot of practice with, but I think nonetheless I can send home for them to do independently, is reading reading photographs and reading artifacts, because kids love that. They love to look at pictures. And so I'm going to share some resources with you now. The first one is the National Archives. And on the National Archives, you can then go to Educator Resources. Docs Teach is amazing. I'll get to that in a minute. But what I sent home this week with my students is, along with the photographs, is this. See, it says worksheets for novice or young students or those learning English. Is this. This is so kid friendly, and I love the fact that there's something, circle what you see in the photo, and there's not a lot of space to write. It's low pressure, which I think is great. So then back on the National Archives there, and there's also, while I'm here, for all of these different kinds of primary documents, this one is another that I sent home, the artifact or object. It just looks like fun, doesn't it? It's, any chance a kid gets to circle something instead of writing it, I think, or checking a box, they're down with that. So this is an example from Docs Teach, which the link again is right on the National Archives website. If you're able to use digital sources, it's pretty neat, because you can then you can have your student, zooming in, do work with this artifact right online. There are questions embedded into it, into the artifact. And if you don't, these really do print up pretty nicely, and you can copy these questions. I did something like that here. This was I made this on Google Docs. Okay, so there's that. All right, another resource that's great, of course, is the Library of Congress. I thought my students would like to look at pictures of of classrooms from the past, so I just typed in one-room schoolhouse, and I got a lot of results. There's this drop-down menu that keeps popping up, so I have to wait for it to disappear before I can click on the next one. There were a couple of websites I happened upon that I think the school districts or the state wrote grants and were able to thereby create these collections of lesson plans. And this is one, Michigan City Area Schools. They have some good lesson plans here that deal with using primary sources. Another is the Arkansas Primary Source Sets. These are great sets of primary documents with what I thought were really great questions, like what's missing from this photograph that you have in your classroom?
Stacy, is it possible there's requests in the chat box? They're not super specific, but I'm guessing they probably want as many as you can. Can you drop in links to what you're showing?
Yes. How can I do that?
Do you know where the chat box is?
Oh, yes. Yes. Should I do that now?
I don't think you necessarily have to do it right now if you're still in the middle of something. I didn't want you to close out of what you had open.
Okay, I will do that before we go. I think this is a great artifact. This is from that Arkansas primary document sets. And I photocopied this and I sent it home with the analyze an artifact or object. Okay, that's that. This is another website. I love the website onehistory.org. And not only does this have a photograph, but it also has another primary source, an oral history. And I just learned by poking around that One History now has One History Primary. So this is just focusing on primary sources with ready to print posters, which are just 8x11 high quality images that you can print. And of course, whoops, that drop down menu got me. There's the main memory network, of course, that's, whoops, and zoom in. And I'll put links for this. Some of my students have logged into Google Classroom, and I will probably post the links for these images there as well so that they can use the zoom in feature if they want to. And finally, I wanted to mention that Scholastic Teachables has a 30-day free trial right now. This biography is from them. So if you're looking for biographies, they have quite a lot. And ReadWorks has text sets, paired text. ReadWorks also has these articles called Article a Day, which are in sets. And it's supposed to be about a 10-minute routine. And the goal is to build content area background knowledge. So I feel like that's a vitamin for them. They read it, they write down 3 facts in their book of knowledge, or they could type 3 facts, whatever, write 3 facts that they want to remember. And in the classroom, they would share those 3 facts, but I'm just going to suggest that they share those at dinner, or that they share those with a sibling, or, they go around that day, I guess only in their house, telling people the fascinating things they learned. And I think that's all I wanted to share for now.
So Stacy, we'll make sure if you could get as many of those links into the chat box as possible. And just so I don't forget, anybody, one quick little tip you might want to do to save right at the end, if you're in the chat box, down by where you can type your message, to the right, there's 3 dots that says more, and one of the options is save chat. And so if we get all of Stacy's links in there, anything, you can save the chat at the end and you'll have all those links. It'll give you a little text document. Any questions for Stacy? We'll make sure she gets all those links dropped in. Stephanie, I believe you're next, right? All right.
Yes. Okay, well, a lot to go after. My name is Stephanie Nichols. I teach 2nd grade currently in Gorham at Narragansett School. I have taught 8th grade U.S. history. I've worked in high school history classrooms, and I used to teach 5th grade social studies and ELA. So I have a pretty wide range of experience in social studies classrooms. So I, kind of as Jennifer, I applied to be part of the teacher cohort. I felt like elementary doesn't always have a ton of representation. And I thought that that was really important because I think you guys do really amazing work in social studies in elementary school. My particular unit was originally focused on women's history. My students did a unit on civil rights, and so I felt like that was a good segue to our unit to women's history. Looking at Women's History Month, obviously now it's a little out, especially with the school closings. But so my unit, I tried to incorporate things like Google Slides and different documents from different museums. So one of the big museums I used was the National Women's History Museum. They have a lot of resources for education on all areas of women's history. So, you know, we were really looking at, in my classroom, looking at women, you know, impacting things like technology and science, and you know, women's right to vote was part of that as well. My students originally were going to do a Google slideshow presentation after reading a biography of a woman in history. So one of the big resources I used was Epic. I don't know if anybody's used Epic reading online, especially now, you know, being mindful of technology and knowing that some of our students have maybe 1 device to 5 kids at home. One of the things that we've been hearing feedback on in Gorham is from some families, now that the libraries are closed, accessing books is difficult. And so students who had access to technology, I really recommended Epic. I put together, you can assign and put together collections of books on whatever topic you want. Could be authors, could be specific topic or content. I put together, I've used it in the past, I've put together a polar one for a science project about polar animals. We've used them, I used that for my civil rights unit. And so I did put together a women's history collection. I think there's about 40 books. What you can do if your students are signed up for Epic, you can share or assign a collection to them, and they can kind of browse and peruse. So I'll see, I don't think, okay. So it's just www.getepic.com. That was a big resource that I've used now that access is hard. One of the other things I've kind of shifted my focus on, especially for the kids that are looking, same in our district kind of as Stacy, we're doing a lot of maintaining of learning with packets available digitally. And so we're not really introducing new content, but we are offering things like social studies and science as enrichment activities. So one of the things that I'm really encouraging my students to do is kind of backpacking or piggybacking off of what Stacy said with working with primary and secondary documents. This is a chance for kids to be writing their own primary sources. And so a lot of my students have really jumped on that and really feel like they're in, you know, they're living history right now. I'm encouraging them to keep journals. A lot of them have shared them on Google Docs. A lot of them have sent me pictures of writing in a notebook. But they're very excited that this is their opportunity to actually be creating a document that, who knows, maybe kids will look at someday 100 years from now. You know, we've been looking at the difference in life between 100 years ago and now, and, you know, they're suddenly realizing like, oh my goodness, like this is history. This is me being part of this right now. And so it's really exciting and it's really fun for them. And I think it can be such a low tech way to engage in social studies and history. You know, I've shared with students, you know, I'm keeping a journal too, you know, as what it's like right now being their teacher and being home from school and not able to be with them in class. And so a lot of them are writing some really interesting stuff. And so that's kind of where I've been with social studies. They're getting really interested and excited in being a part of this history right now and having a way to have their voices heard. You know, we talk about what are some resources from kids 100 years ago during the 1918 flu. You know, and they're like, oh, I don't know. But this is their opportunity to have you know, a perspective from a second grader or from a student in an elementary grade level that's going through this. And so, you know, we've talked a lot about sharing what you're feeling. What do you see? What are you doing with your family? Or, you know, what is it like for you at home? And it's been really, really cool to watch. So that's been one of my favorite things about social studies right now during school closures. And definitely any questions you guys have. I mean, that's kind of what I was planning on building my presentation around, what I could help you possibly with. There are some great, like I know Stacy said, I mean, she had some amazing resources. Like I said, when I was designing my unit, really looked at documents that I could get from the National Women's History Museum, the Smithsonian Museums. The Maine State Museum has some great resources. And like Stacy said, definitely Maine Memory Network. Maine Historical Society has been great.
Does anybody have any questions for Stephanie? And Stacy has dropped, looks like maybe all of them, but Stacy does have a bunch of links in the chat box for everybody. Thank you. There's comment, what I think the journaling project is a powerful one, having my girls do this in my house right now. What a way to get your students to write about what is happening. So good feedback on that. Last call for questions for Stephanie. All right, Jen, the floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Jen Lagasse. I'm a third grade teacher in Ellsworth Elementary School. So I started doing the cohort, and I was going to lean towards Hancock County, and I had a concussion and had to take a break. And so all of this universe works in weird ways. So I ended up just having to step back, and it just worked out well. So I am actually just going to talk about what I'm having my students do now rather than what my cohort focus was going to be. So I'm doing a lot of low tech, no tech assignments for my students. So because a huge majority of my kids right now don't have iPads, I guess next week they're sending out iPads for the kids, but I'm still going to stick with the low tech, no tech. So for most of my subjects, I sent home choice boards menus to give them control over what they're learning. It's a lot of new choices, things that they may not be familiar with, but at the same time, it is a reinforcement of what they are familiar with, their world around them. And I've had a lot of positive feedback from parents because it gives the kids choices, because right now they don't have any control of what's going on in their world. So my next set of choice boards are going to be things like, so it will be sticking with like government and civics, things of that nature. So they'll be I'll ask them to write letters. They won't necessarily get to mail them, but they'll get to write letters to like the principal and asking questions or giving their feedback of what's going on. They'll be writing letters to the superintendent, maybe their thoughts of being out of school for so long, asking questions about what does a superintendent do? Why do we have rules? So that was some of the stuff I was going to do while we were doing that unit, but instead they'll be doing it at home and having the conversations with their parents. So I'm excited that they're gonna have the iPads and have a chance to do the technology that they're used to doing in the classroom, but I'm also more excited that I'm gonna stick with the choice boards. And like I had one parent message me that she loved it because her kindergartner it was funny. She was like, I can dumb this down. And I was like, you mean differentiate? She's like, yeah, that's the word. So she gets to include other members of the family, and it's not just her kids, but it's everybody, like mom and dad, and they get to do different activities together. And it's not just like, I'm anti-worksheets and anti-packets. So this next round, I can just send like 2 or 3 pieces of paper in an envelope and mail it and not have to worry about the pickup and the drop off. And it just, I just feel better about it knowing that these are the activities that the parents can do, and it's a different learning style. They're still learning, but it's being done at home. It's not things we can do in the classroom. We don't have time to, walk the neighborhood and talk about the city hall building, or why do we have the sheriff's department, or why do we have the fire department. And like, those field trip days sadly are numbered, but it's things that they can have conversations with their parents, and it doesn't take long, but it involves further conversations that will continue. And then, like, yeah, I can share some of the choice boards, but there are things that are like evolving. I just keep having conversations with people. I have a college kid, and he helps me, like, just having conversations like, oh, what about doing this, or this would have been fun when I was in school, or oh, I wish we would have done that instead. So it's just an evolving process. And I'm the only person that there's 5 third grade teachers, and everyone else is like, worksheets, busy work. And I'm like, but no, we need to try something different. So that's really all I have right now.
Jen, there is requests in the chat box you kind of mentioned about the ability to share. Do you have a link to a Google Drive?
So I can share my screen right now and just show the first one that I sent home. It's a science social study one.
Yeah, while you're loading that, there's a lot of comments about it, about gaining and maintaining the support and interests of the parents and students. Keeping parents engaged is huge. What an innovative approach. Want to see the choice boards.
So I can share my screen and show this one that I have right now. It's the first one that I sent home. And then the rest of them is just an evolving process that, like the one that I'm going to send home this next time is building a map of your home and your yard, and then doing a fire evacuation route. And then the next day it's going to be do an actual fire drill. Like, we do fire drills at school, but have they done a fire drill at home? Do your meeting place. Don't forget your compass rose. Don't forget your key, and like all the proper elements of a map. Sometimes they forget that. So I will share my screen and just show you the first. I hope this works. Did this work, Joe?
You're not sharing your screen yet.
Oh, wait, share.
Do you want to email it to me really quick and I can pull it up?
I sent it to you already, right?
Yeah. If I say yes, will you still send it to me right now?
I'll share it with you. Yeah, you already have it. Hang on.
Okay. While we're waiting on that, I will tell you that I have one thing that I'm hoping to debut in my listserv tomorrow. I will do a quick little screen share, a crowdsourced piece, and you might hear some different remnants of what you've heard here today. What do I have up? Not that screen.
I just shared it with you, Joe.
Okay, thank you. I'll grab that in 1 second. Do I have a grid up that says PK13?
Yes, Joe.
Yes. So you'll hear again some of the ideas. I sent a survey out and did get some response back. So in here, this is a low tech, no tech piece around, like, so if you're teaching civics and government for pre-K kindergartner, can they write a letter or draw a picture to first responders to thank them for what they do, talk about the responsibilities at home. We've got second grade, a couple third grades and fourth grade in here. We heard about the police and fire departments. Can you call them up and ask them about their jobs? Can you play a game without rules and discuss what happens? Were there problems? Do you need rules? What are the importance of rules? Personal finance and economics, can you have them work on a budget for meals? Can you get a grocery store flyer and have them do like math with that to figure out how much there's going to be? We hear the safety plan, including a safe place, so creating a map. Describe the way weather impacts you each day, interviewing a family member, creating a personal timeline of a student's life, collecting artifacts, what they have in their house around them. And these are pulled from a variety of different places, including some of the teachers here in the room have shared some of their really good ideas. So look for this to be completed. I have a PK6 and then a 7-12 one, as we're kind of looking for that low tech, no tech. How do we support the students who might not have access to technology or iPads, and not like, you know, worksheet type packet piece where there's necessarily a right answer. And if parents, you aren't quite sure how to teach a certain thing, like in here, it's not a right component, right? It's gathering what you have around you and working with that, so that we can hopefully get that, that parent support. I got the email from Jen. And then, is the picture up? Okay. So this is, Jen, you said this was the first one you'd sent home?
Yeah, this was the first one that I sent home. I'm working on the next set that will go home next week. So this was, it's science and social studies. My next one will be, I'll probably have them separated. So one will be science, one will be social studies. I did a math choice board. I did ELA reading. So, I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. Draw and write a place about a place in your community. Make a map of your backyard, your house, go on a scavenger hunt, write about different biomes, the historical figure or someone that has made a difference in our world. So, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be, I mean, it could be someone that is in your family. I mean, the possibilities are endless with a lot of these, which is, I think, great, because the parents don't need, we can't expect them to replicate a classroom. So it's up for interpretation with them, which is, I think, a great thing right now. A personal timeline, which is often what we do in the classroom, but this way they have their parent support if they need it or they don't need it. I mean, they know when they were born, and they know, like, this is a great thing to add to their timeline, that they're out of school for 2 months. And that's, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, which is what I love. They don't have worksheets. They're not like getting like this is new learning, but at the same time, it's not new learning. They're not going to sit at home fighting at the kitchen table with their parents saying, but we didn't do this in class. And then getting emails from parents saying they don't understand how to do this or what this means. Like, it's right there. This is what it means. Does anyone have any questions?
There's a lot of comments. I'm trying to bounce back and forth. I'm going to quick stop share just for a second. Somebody's mentioned the MCLP. People are wondering what MCLP is. I know that the main Curriculum Leaders Association, MCLA, had pulled some stuff together. I don't know if that's a similar piece. Oops, MCLA. Okay. Rachel, do you have the link? I know you'd asked. I can dig out the link if you have it. If you don't have it off the top of your head. Oh, main content literacy project. So I know that the main Curriculum Leaders Association have pulled some pieces together. But we also have, Cindy said, my 8th grader was really dragging until this Monday when one of his teachers provided him with a similar choice board. He became so excited and has pulled the rest of the family into some of the projects. Gina said, good point, parents aren't necessarily trained to teach, and even teacher parents aren't necessarily good at teaching their children. I will say that I was asked, I think it was Tuesday night, I served as the state level person on a national social studies webinar panel about teaching in this environment. And a lot of the questions that were coming up was concerns around elementary. Is this going to further erode the teaching of elementary and social studies right now? Because people are so focused on ELA and math. And I couldn't help myself. I jumped on my soapbox right away. And I said, like, this is the moment where social studies becomes the center of everything. Because I don't think parents are going to feel comfortable getting into math or science terms, right? And I said, but if you look at what we do in a given day, we do social studies. We plan trips. We decide how to spend our money, right? We read the news. We interact. We take in current events. Like, that's what we do. And so my big push was, if you can frame social studies around thinking like that, thinking like these choice board things, thinking about like how we actually live our life, I think parents will do really well with social studies because it's just how we live.
Can I just make a comment on that? So Rachel down here, the Corman Ramos, she's the curriculum coordinator for my school. And she was, we had a PD. It feels like it was just last week, but it was like 2 months ago. We were doing a social studies PD, and one of the first lines that she said was, social studies is why kids go to school. And that's exactly it. Like, social studies is why kids go to school. So we need to keep doing that even though they're at home, so that way they'll keep learning, because it's their world. Like, this is their world. So we need to, they're not going to sit at, like, how many of you cried at the table with your dad doing math? I did. Like, I keep thinking, like, I don't want to be that teacher that sends packets and worksheets home during one of the most traumatic times of their life, and they hate their teacher because they were stuck at the table having to do worksheets or try and figure something out when they can be doing activities with their family and try and make it an enjoyable experience, as horrible as this is, I guess. I mean, like, I'd rather them be doing something with their family and try and engage them with something rather than crying over worksheets because they don't understand them when they just want to be at school with their teacher. So, like, that's what I just keep going back to. I don't want to send stuff that they're not going to understand when they don't have control over so many things. And do their parents really want to fight with them during this time? Things are hard enough as it is. Like, and as a parent that has a college kid that was booted out, I don't want to be doing that either. So that, I mean, that's all I keep thinking. Like, I don't know. Sometimes that's all I have. Sorry, guys.
Hi, everybody. This is Rachel. Sorry. So I'm looking for the MCLA materials. We had a long Zoom yesterday. And I think one of the things that's interesting is that everyone, this is a situation that is rife with opportunities for anyone with an imposter syndrome to feel really bad, because all of us feel like we're not doing enough. A friend of mine said to me today, she's an academic professor, that just like we see people posting happy pictures of their family on Facebook, sometimes it's not perfect. And then there's other people like curriculum leaders and teachers who are posting amazing opportunities, and the rest of us feel like we're not doing enough. And that's how they're coping, or they had those things put in place already. And so I think we all have to bring what we have to the table. I am collecting all these things. You guys have amazing ideas. One thing I've noticed is that my mother's 83 and she has not lived through this. And she's like completely stymied at not having any advice about being able to my children about how to live through this. Usually she said, oh, when I was a kid, this happened. And so one of the things that I really like from what you guys are showing is those primary resources of photos, because those are the kinds of things that a kid could share if they can get online. Or I think one of you said that you're sending pictures home, the primary sources that you could share with a parent, like Jen's saying, and ask their opinion as a way of connecting to families. So I think that there's some middle ground between pages and pages of resources, and, just having, the just simple suggestions. You can have a combination of all that, take those simple suggestions, take some of the wonderful documents that some of you have posted in these great archives, and have kids connect those documents to their families. Because when there's pictures, even a parent who's not literate can look at a picture and say, that reminds me of. So I think you guys are all really on it. So I'm inspired by that, because I'm constantly feeling like I'm not doing enough for everybody. So thank you, Jen, for the shout out, because I guess I said something right at some point. Anyway, I will look for MCLA materials. The one that I just pulled up, they shared yesterday, has a lot of science and literacy, and I'd like to find what they've shared through social studies. There's a couple of those curriculum leaders that are putting me to shame, because they've got like all these great things and they're crowdsourcing everything, and I'm totally impressed, but they're also very generous and they're saying, please steal this from me. So I'm going to go steal those things from you. And Joe, I can send it to you, and maybe you can share it with this group. I just don't think I can find it right this second. Is that okay?
Yeah, and I did find the folder that, at least that's the piece I was familiar with, that I dropped in the chat box. So if there's more, that would be wonderful. And yeah, so that's a good segue. I do not have a 12 o'clock, so we can run a little bit over if need be. So I will open it up for questions, but I will drop the survey into the chat box for you guys. Because if you want, if Rachel pulls some additional resources and I get it in an email later on, the only way I will be able to get that to you is if you complete the survey. So let me figure out which one of my 100 tabs it's in.
Actually, that is the link I was looking for, Joe.
Okay,
so
perfect.
You're organized. And I will say, though, that folks, if you want to keep that, they are constantly putting more things in those folders. So that would be a way to kind of keep abreast of what a lot of curriculum directors are putting together. I know I've been very grateful for it. I actually do have a 12 o'clock meeting, so I'm going to duck out, but thank you all.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
I just dropped a link into the chat box. It's a Google form. The wonders of technology, whatever email you put in, make sure you do it correctly, because that's where it will email to. So if you put a typo in there, you won't get your certificate. If whatever you put your name, so however you want your name done, put that in. There's some other questions that the department is gathering information around. And the last question is, did you complete the webinar? And you have to say yes. I'm telling you right now, that's the correct answer. And if you put in the correct answer, you will score 100%, and it will automatically send you a contact hour certificate. Now, if you've done previous sessions, you will see I had just a generic form. And last night, I think I figured out how to do it. So I think you will actually get the one that's got the DOE logo and my signature and stuff on that. I think I got it figured out. I practiced a couple times last night. So if you need that contact certificate hour, please go into that. While people are doing that, while we have the group here, does anybody have questions for Stacy, Jen, Jennifer, Stephanie, or anybody else in the room? Does anybody want to put anything just out on the table as a general question? I see the chat box lighting up. Gina says, no, thank you. Jennifer, I saw you talking, but I'd muted you before.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Do you want us to do that also?
If you need a contact hour, yes. Or if you guys need additional hours for your planning or anything like that, let me know. I can get you anything.
And also, you said that save the chat by pushing on those three buttons, those three dots. And it doesn't bring up a save option for me. It says allow Wendy to chat with no one, host only, everyone locally.
Is there a top option that says save chat?
No, I don't see that. I don't see that. All I see is chat at the top of the little blue circle.
Okay. I can also, is anybody else having the same issue, or is everybody finding the 3 dots? No.
I guess it's just me then.
Stephanie said yes.
Oh, I mean, sorry, yes, I have the 3 dots to save it.
You do have the 3 dots to save it.
I have the 3 dots, it just doesn't bring up a save option.
Mine's all set. I already got it to my email, and it has the DOE and your signature, all that good stuff.
You got the certificate, Jen? Is that what you said?
Yep, it looks good.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I mean, the other thing you can do is while it's still open, you can just do a copy paste. Copy, select all, paste. Jen Lagasse, Kristen Lagasse wants to know, where did you get your ideas for your choice boards?
So I stole it from another school department. I'm not going to lie. I live in Ellsworth, but I'm a Lewiston High School graduate. So I follow Lewiston. Yeah, nice name, right? Thanks. So I graduated from Lewiston, and they are doing pretty much no tech. And when all of this happened, they posted what they were doing. And so, I mean, Lewiston is my heart. And I saw the stuff that they had posted, and I pulled it up, and I borrowed it. I beg, borrow, steal. So that's where I got the first round of choice boards. So my next set that I will be doing will be stuff that I'm going to make, but I will be pulling it from other areas and then creating just on Google Docs, like it's like 4x4 grid maybe, and typing stuff in.
Oh, there's a lot of good things out there. And again, where I'm hoping to debut it tomorrow, they'll have all the links. But like New York City Public Schools, they have a piece out there where you go grade by grade, and it's like a 70-page packet, kind of like what Rachel had said. Like there's a good prompting question, and then they sent home like the accompanying pictures and stuff like that. I mean, so those links are out there. DC Public Schools, if you want to do more stuff. But a lot of it I looked at, and it just kept coming back to like that really simple piece. Like regardless of what the kid's going to be learning next year, what are the map skills, the historical thinking skills, the money skills, how can I just keep moving them forward with an activity that I think is pretty straightforward enough that a parent or an older sibling can, help with, like build a timeline. Okay, artifacts, like what timeline, order, like that's an important piece. Understanding artifacts, understanding pictures of you are, building the same thing. Rachel had said, including some of the packets, you can get some of those primary sources out there. I mean, you can also just say, get a picture of, whether it's a sibling or parents, like get an older one and then a current one and just look at them side by side. Like, right, what's different? What's changed? I mean, we do that with pictures in history all the time, right? It's a contextualizing piece around history. I was in a session for something Monday and Tuesday, I don't know the days anymore. And they had a picture of, and maybe Heather's still here. Maybe Heather Moran, are you still there? Heather works for the archives.
Still here.
Unmuting. And it's just the idea of like, right, taking an old picture. The one I saw was kids on a playground from like 1910. And then kids would just look at that and be like, what's different?
It's fascinating what they will come up with. When we did sort of the pilot of some of our primary source sets that we developed with the State Museum and the State Library in some of the classrooms, they got to do that sort of deep dive into looking at a photograph of an artifact, looking at a photo, or, like a regular photo, and looking at documents. But it's fascinating what they actually pull out of images, sometimes things that, we, the adults, didn't even notice.
Anybody have any last minute questions? I think the whole panel's still here, right? Stacy, Jen, Jennifer, Stephanie, Heather, our special surprise guest, who's been lurking in the background, but I saw there, works for the archives and has been working on primary source sets for kids as well.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to join in and listen in. Just trying to figure out, how we can best support you guys. So I appreciate it.
Last call on any questions, either in the chat box or by unmuting yourself. Stacy?
So this is in class when we look at a photograph or a painting or anything, we keep it really simple and it's just riffing, what do you see? What do you notice? What do you notice over and over and over again? And then questions, what questions do we have? And I knew that if I just sent home like a T-chart with what do you notice, what questions do you have, my students would not take the time to write down all of the awesome things that they're noticing and all the great questions they have. But it might be neat for people who do have technology if it could almost be like a wiki for kids. Like if you had like a primary source document of the day and kids could join in listing all the things that they're noticing, because you can't replicate that what happens in a classroom at home unless you have family participation. And I know that just isn't necessarily happening with all of my students. So just an idea of how we might be able to do some more of that, just noticing and questioning. So I guess not a question, just an idea.
Yeah, and I think too, like going off of, the thing that I was keeping in mind with, when I suggested to my kids, keep journals or keep track of what's going on around you. I think a lot of that is like making sure that they know how important their voice is and how important it is what they have to say and what they're going through and what they're feeling and seeing and, doing at home. I think for them, it was a lot of like, this is your time. Like your voice is so important. What you have to say is huge anyway, but now especially. And I think you're right. Like that feeling of making sure they know how important they are and how important their observations and what they're going through, how important that is, and knowing that what they say matters and it's important right now, especially always, but especially right now.
Good point.
I can make another last call again. I'm good. As long as you guys want to keep talking and sharing, this has been, I'm always happy to make sure you guys have a space to coordinate. Oh, Heather, do you want to, I'm sorry, Jen, go ahead and then Heather.
Yeah, I was going to answer Heather's. Heather, have you seen, I don't know if there's a way that you can use an iPad to use it as a document camera when you're teaching remotely?
I haven't heard about that. I haven't tried it. This was really just, it grew out of a casual conversation with the AV specialist at the state library, because I was trying to describe what I wanted to do. And he's like, oh, I have this ladybug camera that they don't use over there. But he's like, hey, if you want to try it out, we can set you up. So this is really just an idea at this point, but I would love to be able to do it.
Yeah, and I guess there's a way, I don't know, somebody's figured it out. I'm not really sure, but you can use an iPad as a document camera. I'm sure there's something somewhere if you just Google it. But
Sure.
There was a video somewhere that a teacher had like projected her iPad and then was able to like screencast it or something onto her laptop, and she uses it as like a document camera. It's really neat. Rather than
neat. Okay.
around a ladybug.
Yeah, my tablet in the classroom, I have a Samsung in my classroom right here, and this has a document camera option on it. So I use this all the time in my classroom, and it projects right to either my TV or like a projector or whatever I needed. But there's an app for it right on my tablet.
Wonderful.
And I use
Thank
that
you
all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, we used to have ladybugs in my old district. We all had one in our classroom. And what I liked about it was I could take a picture with the ladybug. And so you can have that document picture on your computer. So you don't always have to be plugged into the actual camera, which was helpful.
Okay, thank you. For right now, we at the archives are still considered, I guess, essential. So I will be going into the office periodically, I guess. So documents can't leave the building, but I can go to them. So this is an option that I'm considering if this goes on for very long.
Heather, you know my vote would be for being essential, right? What would I do without my historical society and archives and all my other social studies loving fans?
And you're awesome, Joe. Thank you.
Any last calls in the room? And so I will say, if you are not on my listserv and would like to be added, please let me know, because my goal, I think, unless I run into any bumps the rest of today, I think tomorrow morning's listserv is going to include links to the no tech, low tech options, kind of by the grade level pieces. And so I want to keep people have access to that. It's a long shot. I don't think it'll be in Friday's listserv, but I'm hoping by Monday to be able to say, here's the link to see the presentation by the archives. Here's the link to see the presentation from the museum. So if you're not on my list, let me know and I can get you added there as well. Otherwise, I'm going